time for another reading wrap-up. As some of you know, in my last TBR, I wanted to wallow. I wanted to have a good cry, really sit with my feelings, and well, did these books deliver? All the books I read genuinely moved me, but all in very different ways, and it was really the perfect selection of books for this self-inflicted assignment of wallowing. So let's update my reading journal. Three shriveled lemons and a plastic bag of pita bread that's more dried and moldy sit next one to another. Through Salama's eyes, we see Syria as it goes through a revolution. And As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow by Zulfa Khattu, we meet Salama, who is 18 years old and was studying to become a pharmacist in Syria when the revolution broke out. Because of that, she's now functioning as a doctor at the local hospital, and she's struggling with this dilemma of staying to save all these people every day in the hospital, which is already running low on doctors and nurses, and is her way of defending her homeland, or to leave and save herself and her family as it gets increasingly dangerous to stay. This book was extremely well written, from the lyrical prose to the pacing. We get moments that are devastating, and then we get these beautiful, heartwarming moments which honestly made me cry equally. It was such a great balance between showing the harsh reality, really not holding back towards the audience of how awful it is and how helpless it can feel, but then also showing that there is so much to save and so many people who are fighting to keep the culture and country alive. It's one of those books that sticks with you. I still regularly think of several parts of this book and just its overall message. I could really see these scenes so vividly in my head and as I read it, and the way the author takes us in the thought of our main character into such depth, showing her fears but also her resilience and careful hope, was so incredible. All the other characters also have character development and such distinct personalities and their purpose in the story. The romance part was also really cute. It was so wholesome and actually added to the overall plot in a nice way. I will keep it spoiler-free in the end, but I just want to say that it has this really warm underlying message that the right person will not be just your source of happiness, but rather make you see the happiness that is already in your life, however mundane and simple it may be, especially in hard times, and that they will bring out the strength that is already in you. I just thought it was very beautifully done, and this being set in wartime during a revolution, I think there were some very obvious tropes it could have used, which it didn't, which I liked. There were some, but they made sense. There is this one moment that kind of shows how in a lot of parts of the book, the author plays with seriousness and lightheartedness within the same moment, besides those which are at the extreme of happy or sad. My breath hitches in my throat. I try desperately to gather at anything scientific to explain the act of falling in love. How long does it stay in the body, incubating, before I begin to show symptoms? Is it chronic or fleeting? Are the circumstances with the war a factor in speeding up the process? The Ghibli references were a really nice bonus because I love Studio Ghibli, and so those references really worked for me. I have nothing but praise for this book. I think anyone who enjoys young adult fiction would like it too. And especially if you're a fan of the way books like The House Under Cerulean Sea or A Man Called Ove make you feel, then this one is for you too. They are entirely different stories or writing altogether, but they all hit that sweet spot of being heartbreaking and heartwarming at the same time that just make you feel so hopeful for humanity. That being said, there are some content warnings for this, so make sure you look those up in case there are some things you're not comfortable reading about, because it's not an easy read and there are some really horrible moments described, but it's done very respectfully, I would say. The next book, Now Go on Grief and Studio Ghibli by Carl Thomas Smith, was a logical next read for me. What do you think of when you hear Studio Ghibli? Elegant, exquisitely translucent watercolor skies, sunsets that effortlessly turn from the lightest pastel hues to the most striking halogen glows as they effervesce, the pang of childhood nostalgia and a beguiling sense of wonderment at the beauty of a natural world. Perhaps a style of cloud so unique and so recognizable that it rivals even the best that the real world has to offer. Or even a vision of Totoro himself, the culturally ubiquitous gentle giant which has become Studio Ghibli's honorary mascot. I agree with the author that all of these come to mind when I first think of Studio Ghibli, and I also agree that there is so much more. This feeling, these messages that these movies so subtly but definitely convey. And the author does a really wonderful job at unpacking a lot of the common themes and messages in Ghibli movies, in particular as they relate to death, loss, and grief. Now Go is a book part of the Inklings series or collection. It's published by this independent publisher, 404 Inc. I found out about this publisher through Camilla at Hasty Books, who mentioned some of these Inklings in one of her videos. It was such a lovely find, and I'm sad that I can't get any physical copies because they only ship to the UK. But I might buy the ebook of a few more because I really enjoyed this one. Now Go read like one of those really good late night conversations with a friend as you are thinking and talking about life. A very eloquent friend in this case. I will read some more quotes of this book, which are absolutely gorgeous. It starts by exploring different forms of loss and the grief that comes with those. There are different kinds of personal losses, but also communal and global losses that we deal with on a daily basis. And throughout the book, the author explores a lot more than just human death as the cause for feelings of loss and grief. Ghibli's messages on environmentalism, conformity in society, and capitalism are also explored, which I found really interesting. The author describes such losses as: we face a loss of some kind most days, and some are smaller than others. Not so much a series of little deaths then as little griefs, petits chagrins. We lose time, we lose love, we lose passion, we lose sight of who we are in the shadow of a world which, for the most part at least, does not care to know the eccentricities of our inner workings, or wish for us to wear them on our sleeves. And that leads in well into the discussion on Kiki's Delivery Service, evidently a movie that I love, which has this critique on society where we are all expected to conform in a certain way. There are certain expectations for all of us, not to be too different, too much, too loud, etc. And the author describes, instead of a campy, cloak-swishing villain, the bad guy here is life and what it does to people who are special, people who are different. And related, it highlights the difference with other animated children movies where usually there is one big dramatic moment that we all remember and all collectively cry over and over again, which is not something that most Ghibli movies have. And the author says that there is no jump scare, no Bambi, no Lion King-esque moment of bleak gratification wherein all of our worst fears are realized, is not an evasion but a potent storytelling device, one which says, there is no closure here, no endpoint. Things are simply not that easy. It says that death, as much of a contradiction as it seems, isn't an event. It isn't something that just happens. It's something that you have to learn to live with. Not just once, as an unnamed monster that will disappear off into the night once the deed is done, but forever. An eternal phantom, neither benevolent nor benign, but not inherently evil either. This book is definitely best read if you have seen most, if not all, Studio Ghibli movies, especially the Miyazaki movies, as well as Grave of the Fireflies, which are discussed quite in depth in this book. It's not so much an issue of spoilers, but more that it may be difficult to fully understand the author's point without having watched these movies. I really love this book and I will likely read it again, and it has made me want to rewatch all of the Studio Ghibli movies again as well, perhaps with a slightly different perspective on them. I think my key takeaway of this book though is that understanding the world need not come at the cost of appreciating it, which is something that really resonates with me. Knowing all the terrible things that are happening in the world, knowing the role of the human hand in all of those, is a prerequisite to take action and to really appreciate the world and everything it gives to us more. So I want to end with one final quote. As well as an instruction manual, these films are a love letter. True, they are addressed to a lover who has been deeply spurned and who may never quite forgive us, but they show a love that is real, one which is honest and in many senses vital. The best ways in which nature is rendered, the vivid colors of the sunsets and the clouds, are last-ditch efforts, the works of someone who so clearly cares deeply and intimately to show us not just what the world could look like without us, but also to show the world how, in our heart of hearts, we perceive it, how much it means to us, not just as a thing of sustenance, but as a thing of beauty and wonder, a thing of awe. In a way, it doesn't really matter if the world, in whatever form that takes, ever receives the letter. It is the act of writing, which is the act of love. It's strange how we always give big news to loved ones in a coma, as if a coma is just a thing that happens from a lack of something to be excited about in your life. Jeanette McCurdy's book, I'm Glad My Mom Died, opens with her mom being in a coma and Jeanette saying things to her in one of the many attempts to get her out of that coma. All family members are taking turns saying shocking things or triggering things that they think will do it, but Jeanette thinks that she has the winner and tells her mom how she's finally at the weight goal her mom had for her. And it's a start into a brutally honest memoir where we read how her mother not only started Jeanette's eating disorder and encouraged it over the years, but also the mental and emotional abuse that took place, which affected the author until way beyond the death of her mom. It's a very tough book to read, but it's such an important contribution. It's incredible that she decided to share this story because it does expose a lot about the environment that child actors are in, and there are probably so many more young people in this industry who have suffered or are suffering in silence still. So this book has rightfully been very popular. Celebrity literature is usually something I'd rather avoid, but I think it was clear that this one was going to be quite different, and it certainly was. I feel like it feels like a very authentic account of what happened to her and reads like a way for the author to take back the narrative, which is so important. It's not an easy book to read because it gives really an honest account. There are a lot of very intimate moments described, and you really get a read on the author's thoughts and self-narrative. And although some reviews have called it hilarious in addition to devastating, I wouldn't say I found it all that funny. The author is definitely very witty, so the writing is great, and I guess you could call it funny, but the overall vibe of the book is really dark, which makes sense considering the main topic. So don't expect haha funny, but rather just really good writing that does include sarcastic remarks and anecdotes that most people would be too embarrassed to share. I think you all need to really applaud Jeanette McCurdy for being so open, so vulnerable, and really not holding back. So while it is definitely an upsetting read, I would recommend it if you feel okay reading it despite the content warnings. I think we need this perspective on the celebrity culture, on the industry, and what it means to be a child actor. Anyone in my generation has watched or at least heard of iCarly and the many other Nickelodeon and Disney Channel shows that were around at the time, and we look at them as privileged young people who have this amazing opportunity and shiny life, and this is something that comes up in the book a lot. people, and in particular her mother, but also others, are saying, you're so lucky, people would do anything to be in your shoes. And it's true, but only because outsiders don't know what it is actually like. We only see the exciting side. And if people knew, then they didn't talk about it. So yes, teenagers looking at these shows may have wanted to be them, but only because the pressure, the emotional and physical abuse, the sexual harassment was not talked about. And it's awful that then, and probably now still, this idea of you're so lucky is used as a way to gaslight people, to silence people into not complaining and not going public about the awful situations that they've been put in. So this book is so impactful in bringing that perspective anyways, and I think it shows incredible strength. I normally don't rate memoirs, but in this case, 5 stars. At a wedding shortly after our own, I followed Patrick through the dense crowd at the reception to a woman who was standing by herself. In Sorrow and Bliss, Meg Mason, our narrator and main character, is Martha. In a witty, sarcastic and dry voice, she takes us through her, let's say, messy life. For the large duration of the book, she struggles with an undiagnosed mental illness which has a large impact on her life, sometimes to a debilitating extent. It's difficult to tell what this book is about. Mental health is a large and constant theme, and it shows how it affected Martha's self-perception, her relation with her family, and romantic relationships. It's also about the question of children, having them or not, and about her relationship with her husband, Patrick. There's not one clear storyline. It's pretty messy too, which I think fits the overall vibe of this book. It almost reads in a diary voice, where we just get random snippets of her life. I like the way that mental health was treated. It felt like a very honest account and almost a boring one, in the sense that it was not romanticized. Our main character is not a likable character in many instances. She does things that would make you dislike her, but I think it has an important message that our mental illnesses are not us. They don't define us. They may affect how we behave sometimes, but at the end of the day, we are more than that. And another important message that the book nicely relays is the importance of finding the right therapist. This one took me by surprise, but I think anyone who has ever been to therapy knows that this is true, and that the progress you can make with the right therapist in a short amount of time can be night and day from spending years with one you just don't really click with. And I thought that was a really nice addition to this book. I do have mixed feelings about this book because there are a lot of things that I liked about it, but I think that after reading all the previous books, Sorrow and Bliss was not what I was looking for. I think it's objectively a good book, but it wasn't what I wanted to read, I guess. It was different from what I expected, although I can't really describe what I was expecting. But if you like books like Normal People or Sally Rooney in general, I think you might like this. I think the book has a lot of similar vibes, and similarly, it's the relationships between the different characters that are the most memorable about this book. I cannot recollect the storyline of Conversations with Friends or Normal People, but I can distinctly feel and remember the relationships in those books. There is a similar sense of dread, knowing but not knowing that one of the characters is going to do something really detrimental to their relationships. And you know it's going to get even messier, and you don't know if they'll make it through, because this is clearly the type of book that could have a negative ending. So that's my conclusion, I guess. Would recommend if you enjoyed Sally Rooney or similar. The end. Emma Carpenter drops her e-reader. Like surfacing from a deep dive with aching lungs, she has never been so grateful to see those two words on her paper white screen. The Last Word by Taylor Adams follows Emma Carpenter. Emma has just read a terrible self-published thriller/horror book, which is needlessly gruesome and unrealistic, and she is ready to destroy it in her online review. She hesitates, but then really does not hold back in writing an absolutely scathing review. She does this from the sofa of the place on a beachfront. She is house-sitting. She has her dog with her, but otherwise is there pretty much in isolation. She somewhat communicates with her neighbor and occasionally texts the homeowner, but she's otherwise kind of all alone, and some weird things have been happening in the house, and then that kind of quickly increases after she writes this review. But surely it's a coincidence, and it can't be that the author is coming for her because of the bad review, right? I needed a bit of a shift after all these very sad books before moving to some comfort books, which I will read next. So I picked this as a book palette cleanser, if you will. A thriller seemed perfect for that. I chose this one because I have read No Exit by Taylor Adams a long while ago, upon one of your recommendations actually, and I really enjoyed it. At the time, I had been trying to find a good thriller and failed repeatedly, but then No Exit was really what I wanted to find. So then when I heard Rosica over at The Midnight Reader mention this book a couple of months ago, I knew that this was going to be my next thriller read, and I was just kind of waiting for the right time. Once again, Taylor Adams delivered. While No Exit is still my favorite of the two, I will be reading more of his books. I'm not a seasoned thriller reader, but I've watched a lot of thriller TV series and movies that I can recognize the tropes, I can predict some twists. But with Taylor Adams, I really can't. I'm on the edge of my seat, shocked at every twist and turn, and I always read his books so quickly because I can't wait to see where it ends. And more than that, when I'm reading his books, I have this intense feeling of fear throughout the whole read. Anything could make me jump. So it's perfect if you live a very privileged, non-scary life. I am amazed at how this feeling is really consistent throughout. I also love this author's writing style, the way it even adds some humor here and there. I like the different POVs in this particular book. I thought that worked really well. I like the added in backstory of the main character, Emma. I think that really elevated the story, and the way it was done and the pacing in which it was done was really good. I would really recommend this one and No Exit, solid 4 stars. There is a bit of graphicness to it, quite brutal. In case that puts you off, maybe that's not for you, but I thought it was okay, and I'm not a big gore fan myself. A small dog-related spoiler coming in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The dog lives. In case you're worried about that, the dog lives at the end. So you can safely read it if that is, understandably, something you absolutely don't want to read about. So those were the books I read recently. Let me know in the comments what you have been reading, or if you have any recommendations for me based off of these books. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you did. That would really help me out. Thank you so much for watching, and have a nice day.